My name is Robert, and I'm 65 years old. My son Alex turned 35 last month. He's a good man, a successful architect, a loving husband, a wonderful father to my 2 grandchildren. We have a good relationship on the surface. We talk every Sunday. We celebrate holidays together. He's respectful, he's kind, he's everything a father could hope for in a son. But our relationship is a beautiful, well-maintained house with no one living inside. It's a facade. Because my son, my 35-year-old son, will not open up to me. He will not share his struggles, his fears, his disappointments. He will not let me in, and I've recently and painfully come to understand why. It's because for the first 20 years of his life, I taught him, through my words and my actions, that his feelings were a problem to be solved, a weakness to be overcome, an inconvenience to be dismissed. I was the fixer, the problem solver, the man with all the answers. And in my relentless quest to fix his problems, I broke his trust. I taught him that his emotional world was not a safe place to share with me. And now, I am living with the consequences of that lesson. I am here to tell you how I built the wall that now stands between us brick by brick so that you don't make the same mistake. I come from a generation of men who were taught that emotions were a liability. We were taught to be strong, to be stoic, to be providers. We were taught that our job was to fix things, not to feel things. And I was a star pupil. I prided myself on my rationality, my logic, my ability to remain calm in a crisis. I saw emotions as messy, unpredictable, and inefficient, and I brought that same mentality to my parenting. When Alex was a child, and he would come to me with a problem, a scraped knee, a fight with a friend, a bad grade on a test, I would immediately go into fixer mode. I wouldn't listen. I would strategize. I wouldn't comfort. I would command. I wouldn't validate. I would invalidate. I remember when he was about 8 years old, he came home from school in tears. He had been picked last for the kickball team at recess. He was heartbroken, humiliated. He came to me, his little face streaked with tears, and he said, "Dad, nobody wants to play with me." Instead of pulling him into a hug, instead of saying, "Oh, buddy, that must have felt terrible," I said, "Well, are you any good at kickball? Probably not. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to practice every day after school. I'll teach you how to kick, how to catch. We'll make you the best kickball player in your class, and then they'll have to pick you." I didn't hear his pain. I only heard a problem to be solved. I saw his sadness as a weakness to be eliminated through training and discipline. I thought I was helping him. I thought I was teaching him resilience. What I was actually teaching him was that his feelings of sadness and humiliation were not acceptable, and that the only way to deal with them was to become so good that he would never have to feel them again. This pattern repeated itself throughout his childhood. He was afraid of the dark, so I didn't comfort him. I bought him a nightlight and told him to be a big boy. He was nervous about a school presentation, so I didn't empathize with his anxiety. I made him practice his speech in front of me 100 times until it was perfect. He had his heart broken for the first time at 16, and when he came to me, his eyes red-rimmed and his voice thick with a pain I had long forgotten. I clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, son. There are plenty of other fish in the sea. You'll forget all about her in a week." I offered him a platitude instead of a presence. I offered him a solution instead of a sanctuary. I taught him over and over again that his emotional world was a foreign country to me, a place I had no interest in visiting, only in fixing from afar. I was the king of the unsolicited solution. I was the master of the dismissive platitude. I was the expert at invalidating his feelings in the name of helping. I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was teaching him to be strong, to be resilient, to be a man. But what I was really doing was teaching him to be emotionally self-sufficient. I was teaching him that he was on his own when it came to his feelings. I was teaching him that his heart was not safe with me, and he learned the lesson well. As he grew into a teenager, he stopped coming to me with his problems. The emotional pipeline between us, which had once been a trickle, dried up completely. Our conversations became superficial, limited to school, sports, and his plans for the future. I didn't notice the change at first. In fact, I was proud of it. I thought, he's becoming a man. He's learning to handle his own problems. I didn't realize that he was still having the problems. He just wasn't sharing them with me. He was sharing them with his friends, with his mother, with anyone who had proven they could listen without immediately trying to fix. The full impact of what I had done didn't hit me until he was in his late 20s. He was a young architect working at a demanding firm, and he was struggling. He was stressed. He was overworked. He was questioning his career choice. I knew this not because he told me, but because his wife, my wonderful daughter-in-law Sarah, told me. She called me one day, her voice full of concern. She said, "Robert, I'm worried about Alex. He's so unhappy. He won't talk to me about it. He just bottles everything up. Maybe you could talk to him. He's always looked up to you." I was flattered. I was also, for the first time, a little scared. I called Alex. I invited him out for a beer. We sat at a quiet bar, and I tried to open the door that I had spent so many years closing. I said, "Alex, Sarah tells me you're having a tough time at work. I just want you to know that you can talk to me about anything. I'm here for you." He looked at me, and there was no anger in his eyes, no resentment. There was just a kind of weary, sad resignation. He said, "I appreciate that, Dad, but I'm fine. It's just work stuff. I'll figure it out." And that was it. He shut the door, gently, politely, but firmly. He would not let me in. He had learned his lesson too well. His feelings were his own problem to solve, and he would solve them on his own without me. That was the moment I realized the true cost of my parenting. I had raised a son who was strong, who was resilient, who was self-sufficient, but I had also raised a son who was emotionally distant, who was incapable of being vulnerable with his own father, who saw me not as a safe harbor, but as a consultant to be engaged only when a practical solution was required. I had succeeded in making him a problem solver, but I had failed in making him a son who felt safe enough to share his heart with his father. Since that day, I have been on a quiet, desperate campaign to earn back his trust. I have had to unlearn a lifetime of habits. I have had to learn to listen, really listen, without formulating a solution in my head. I have had to learn to ask questions, not to gather data for a diagnosis, but to understand his experience. I have had to learn to say, "That sounds really hard," instead of, "Here's what you should do." I have had to learn to be a presence, not a problem solver. It is the hardest work I have ever done, and my progress is slow. We still have our Sunday calls. But now, instead of asking him about his work, I ask him about his life. I ask him what he's excited about, what he's worried about, what he's dreaming about. Sometimes I get a glimpse, a small crack in the wall. He'll mention a frustration with a client, a worry about his kids. And in those moments, I have to fight every instinct in my body that wants to jump in and fix it. I have to force myself to just listen, to just be there, to just say, "I hear you." That sounds tough. It feels unnatural. It feels passive. It feels like I'm not doing my job as a father. But I am. I am finally, at 65, learning what my job really is. It's not to solve his problems. It's to love him through them. I understand now that the reason he won't open up to me is not because he doesn't love me. It's because I taught him not to. I taught him that his feelings were a burden, an inconvenience, a problem to be solved. And he, being a good and dutiful son, learned to stop burdening me. He learned to handle his own emotional life, to be his own confidant, his own comforter. He built a fortress around his heart, not to keep me out, but to protect himself from my well-intentioned but ultimately damaging attempts to fix him. And the irony is that my desire to fix everything came from a place of love. I didn't want him to suffer. I didn't want him to feel pain. I wanted to clear the path for him, to make his life as smooth and easy as possible. But in my attempt to protect him from the pain of life, I robbed him of the opportunity to learn how to navigate it. I robbed him of the resilience that comes from falling down and getting back up on your own. And I robbed myself of the intimacy that comes from sitting with someone in their pain, not as a fixer, but as a fellow traveler. So, if you are a parent and you are a fixer, I'm asking you to consider a different approach. When your child comes to you with their heart in their hands, resist the urge to fix it. Resist the urge to solve it. Resist the urge to dismiss it. Just hold it, gently, reverently. Listen to their story. Validate their feelings. Let them know that their emotional world is a safe place with you. Let them know that their sadness, their anger, their fear, their disappointment are not problems to be solved, but experiences to be shared. Be a sanctuary, not a strategist. Be a presence, not a problem solver. Be a father, a mother, a parent who is not afraid of the beautiful, messy, and unpredictable world of human emotion. I'm still trying to tear down the wall between my son and me, brick by brick. It is slow, painstaking work, and I may never fully succeed. But I have to try, because the house of our relationship, the beautiful, well-maintained house with no one living inside, is a lonely place to be. And I want to come home. I want to be let in. I want to know my son, my whole son, not just the successful, competent, problem-solving man I helped to create, but the vulnerable, feeling, and beautifully complex human being that he is. I want to know his heart, and I am finally learning that the only way to do that is to first be willing to share my own. Let me give you another example, one that, in hindsight, is almost comical in its absurdity, but at the time felt like the right thing to do. When Alex was in middle school, he had a pet hamster named Squeaky. He adored that hamster. He built elaborate mazes for it out of cardboard tubes. He fed it the best hamster food. He would let it run around on his desk while he did his homework. One morning he woke up and found that Squeaky had died in his sleep. He was devastated. He came into the kitchen holding the little, still body in his hands, and he was sobbing, the kind of deep, body-racking sobs that only a child who has experienced their first loss can produce. My wife immediately went to him, hugged him, and started crying with him. She was sharing his grief. And what did I do? I went into fixer mode. I saw his pain as a problem to be solved. I said, with a brisk, can-do attitude, "Okay, son, it's sad, I know. But these things happen. Hamsters don't live very long. Now let's give him a proper burial. We'll make a little box. We'll dig a hole in the backyard. We'll say a few words. And then this afternoon we'll go to the pet store and get you a new hamster, a better one, maybe a guinea pig this time. They live longer." I thought I was being practical. I thought I was teaching him how to deal with death in a mature, efficient way. I didn't realize that I was completely invalidating his grief. I was telling him that his sadness was an overreaction, that his beloved pet was easily replaceable, and that the proper way to deal with loss was to quickly and efficiently move on to the next thing. I didn't give him the space to be sad. I didn't allow him to mourn. I just tried to fix it. He went along with my plan, as he always did. We buried Squeaky. We went to the pet store. We got a new hamster. And he never loved that new hamster the way he had loved Squeaky, because I had taught him that loving something too much was risky, that it would only lead to a pain that his father would dismiss and try to pave over with a quick and easy solution. This is the core of the problem. As a fixer, I was fundamentally uncomfortable with negative emotions, my own and those of others. I saw sadness, anger, fear, and disappointment as signs of failure, as problems to be eliminated, not as natural and necessary parts of the human experience. And because I was uncomfortable with these feelings in myself, I could not tolerate them in my son. So I did everything I could to short-circuit them, to solve the problem that was causing them, to move him as quickly as possible from a negative emotional state to a positive one. I was an emotional firefighter, constantly dousing the small flames of his feelings before they could become a real fire. But what I didn't realize is that those small fires are what forge the steel of emotional resilience. By constantly putting them out, I was not making him stronger. I was making him more dependent on me to manage his emotional world. And when he finally grew up and realized that my management was actually a form of control, he had no choice but to fire me from the job. I understand now that my need to fix was a form of anxiety. I was anxious about his future, anxious about his happiness, anxious about my own performance as a father. And my anxiety manifested as a need to control his environment, to control his choices, to control his feelings. If I could just solve all his problems, then he would be happy and I would be a good father. It was a simple but deeply flawed equation, because happiness is not the absence of problems. And good parenting is not about solving all your child's problems. It's about teaching them how to solve their own and loving them through the process, whether they succeed or fail. My wife tried to tell me this in her own gentle way. She was the emotional heart of our family. She was the one who would sit with Alex in his sadness, who would listen to his frustrations, who would celebrate his joys. She was the one who was doing the real work of parenting, the work of emotional connection. And I, in my arrogance, dismissed her approach as soft, as coddling. I thought I was the one who was preparing him for the real world. But the real world is not just a series of problems to be solved. It is a rich, complex, and often messy tapestry of human emotion. And I had given my son none of the tools he needed to navigate it. I had only given him a hammer and taught him that every problem was a nail. So what am I doing now to try and change this? I am learning to be a student of my son. I am learning to be curious about his life, not in an interrogative way, but in a genuinely interested way. I am learning to ask open-ended questions, questions that don't have a right or wrong answer, questions that invite him to share his experience rather than just report his data. Instead of asking, "Did you close that deal at work?" I am learning to ask, "What's been the most interesting challenge you've been working on lately?" Instead of asking, "Are the kids doing well in school?" I am learning to ask, "What's been the funniest thing one of the kids has said this week?" I am learning to be vulnerable myself. I am sharing my own struggles, my own fears, my own regrets. I am trying to show him that it is okay to not be okay, that it is okay to be a work in progress. I am trying to model the behavior that I failed to teach him. It is not easy. It goes against every fiber of my being that has been conditioned to be strong, to be in control, to have all the answers. But I am trying, because I have learned far too late that true strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to embrace it. And I am seeing small, hopeful signs of progress. A few weeks ago on our Sunday call, he told me about a difficult client he was dealing with. And for the first time, he didn't just state the problem. He shared his frustration. He said, "I just don't know what to do, Dad. I've tried everything and he's still not happy." The old me would have immediately jumped in with a dozen different strategies, a 10-point plan for how to handle the client. But the new me, the me that is trying to learn, took a deep breath and said, "Wow, son, that sounds incredibly frustrating. I'm so sorry you're having to deal with that." And then there was a pause, a long pause. And in that pause, I could feel the tectonic plates of our relationship shifting just a little. And then he said, "Yeah, it really is." And he started to talk. He talked for 10 minutes about the client, about his boss, about the pressure he was under. And I just listened. I didn't fix. I didn't solve. I just listened. And it was one of the best conversations we have ever had. It was a small victory, a tiny crack in the wall, but it was a start. It was a sign that it is possible to change, that it is possible to learn, that it is possible to build a new kind of relationship, even after decades of getting it wrong. It will not be the relationship I could have had if I had been a different kind of father from the beginning. That relationship is gone forever. But it can be a real relationship, an honest one, a relationship built not on the shifting sands of performance and problem solving, but on the solid rock of mutual love, respect, and a willingness to be vulnerable. So this is my message to all the fathers, all the parents who are fixers. Your desire to solve your children's problems comes from a place of love, but it is a misguided love. It is a love that, in its attempt to protect, actually harms. It is a love that, in its attempt to strengthen, actually weakens. It is a love that, in its attempt to connect, actually creates distance. There is a better way, a way that is harder, that is messier, that requires more patience, more humility, and more courage. It is the way of listening, of validating, of empathizing. It is the way of being a sanctuary, not a strategist. It is the way of loving your children not just for their strengths, but for their struggles. It is the way of being a parent who is not afraid to say, I don't have the answer, but I am here with you in the question. My son is 35 and he is still learning to open up to me, and I am 65 and I am still learning how to listen. We are two works in progress, trying to find our way back to each other after a lifetime of missed connections. And my hope, my prayer, is that our story will help you to write a different one for yourself and your children. A story of connection, of trust, of a love that is strong enough to hold the beautiful, messy, and wonderful truth of who we are. There's a fundamental misunderstanding that I had about strength. I believed that strength was the ability to not be affected by things, to be impervious to pain, to be a rock in the storm, and I tried to instill this version of strength in my son. But I was wrong. That's not strength. That's numbness. True strength is the ability to feel the pain, to acknowledge the fear, to sit with the discomfort, and to still move forward. It's the courage to be vulnerable, and by constantly trying to fix his problems, by constantly trying to shield him from negative emotions, I was not teaching him strength. I was teaching him to be numb. I was teaching him to disconnect from his own feelings, to see them as an enemy to be defeated rather than as a messenger to be listened to. And the tragic irony is that in teaching him to be numb, I became numb myself. I became numb to his needs, numb to his pain, numb to the growing distance between us. I was so focused on the external world of problems and solutions that I lost touch with the internal world of emotion and connection. I was a man living in his head, and I had forgotten how to live in my heart. And the price I paid for that numbness was the intimacy of my relationship with my son. I think about the kind of grandfather I am now, compared to the kind I could have been. I am a good grandfather, I think. I play with my grandchildren, I read them stories, I listen to their little dramas. But there is always a slight distance, a formality, that comes from the fact that I am still, in many ways, a stranger to their father. They see the polite, careful way that Alex interacts with me, and they learn from it. They learn that Grandpa is someone to be respected, to be loved, but perhaps not someone to be fully trusted with the messy contents of their hearts. The generational pattern, though weakened, continues, and that is a source of profound sadness for me. But it is also a source of motivation. It motivates me to keep trying, to keep learning, to keep showing up. It motivates me to be the kind of man, the kind of father, the kind of grandfather that my family deserves. It motivates me to break the cycle of emotional numbness that has been passed down through the men in my family for generations. It is the hardest work I have ever done, but it is also the most important, and it is work that is available to all of us. It is the work of choosing connection over control. It is the work of choosing empathy over efficiency. It is the work of choosing presence over problem solving. It is the work of learning to be a safe harbor for our children's hearts. It is never too late to start this work. It may be harder the longer you wait. The walls may be higher, the trust may be more broken, but it is never, ever too late to try. So, if you are a parent and you recognize yourself in my story, I want to leave you with a challenge. The next time your child comes to you with a problem, with a feeling, with a piece of their heart, I want you to try something different. I want you to take a deep breath, to quiet the fixer in your head, and to just listen. I want you to look them in the eye and say, "That sounds really hard. Tell me more." And then, I want you to just be quiet, to just be present, to just hold the space for them. Don't offer a solution. Don't share your own experience. Don't tell them it will be okay. Just be with them in their feeling. It will feel uncomfortable. It will feel like you are not doing anything, but you are. You are doing the most important thing in the world. You are showing them that they are not alone. You are showing them that their feelings are welcome. You are showing them that their heart is safe with you. And that is a gift that will last a lifetime. It is a gift I am only now learning to give to my son. And it is a gift I pray you will give to yours.